I feel hope today, and I wanted to tell you that as quickly as possible before it disappeared. Today, we are officially nominating Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee for president, capping off an insane summer and ushering in a season of joy that is actually penetrating my big, shrill heart. For many of us whose lives are dominated by doom scrolling, I don't think we realized how much we were missing joy from our politics. Motivation can't just come from being so scared by the alternative. Motivation can come and should come from believing in your side of things, believing in their causes, because they're your causes too. I love voting. I even have a necklace that says vote that I can only wear occasionally. 2016 was the first time I was eligible to vote as a citizen of this country. And for that, I say, I'm sorry. I don't think it was all my fault, but maybe. But because I had lived here for so long without being able to vote, I take even more pride. Every time an election comes around, I get my little sticker. I try to get multiple stickers. But this year is going to be very special for me. It is my daughter's first time voting, and I am so excited that she gets to vote in an election as exciting and as historic as this one, as important. Woo! This is Choice Words. I'm Samantha Bee. My guest today is a true powerhouse, Symone Sanders Townsend. In 2016, she was the National Press Secretary for Bernie Sanders and later served as Deputy Assistant to President Biden and Senior Advisor and Chief Spokesperson to Vice President Kamala Harris. Now you can catch her co-hosting The Weekend on MSNBC. She made a point that I loved, that voters like making history. It's exciting. And it compels people to participate in democracy. At least, I hope so. So take a listen and make good choices.
Greetings.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Oh, thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
me.
I'm so excited to be talking to you. I feel like it's a huge week, in a huge month, in a huge year, in a huge election cycle, in a huge, huge, huge time.
We did not even know we were going to be here.
No.
Like, as I was telling someone just a couple of days ago, just think about what you thought this election was going to be
Yeah.
on June 1st.
Yes.
And realize where we are now here in August and all of the things that have happened. We don't even know what's going to happen before Election Day. There's still the rest of August. There's September, all of October. We haven't even hit an October surprise yet. So this is truly like, ooh, I need a drink.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this episode is hitting squarely in the middle of the DNC week.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wondering which old wrestler is going to be giving the keynote address tonight. I mean, take a guess. Could be anyone.
I mean,
I'm so excited.
you know, I know Vice President Harris pretty well. I don't know if there is a wrestler per se
Okay.
that she would select knowing her, but then again, the second gentleman might decide that, he wants to throw a wrench in there. So who knows? Okay, Sam, who knows?
It could, and you know what? I'm just going to hold a place in my heart. Just for that. Okay, so this podcast, as you know, is all about choice. And I want to talk about big choices that you've made, things that you maybe knew were big choices at the time that were big, or things that you didn't know were a big choice that like changed kind of everything. But first I have to say that I did read that when you were growing up in Omaha, you would walk around and you had an alter ego. You had a newscaster alter ego whose name was Donna Burns.
I don't know who Donna Burns was or where she came from. I don't even know who she reported for. I don't know who paid her.
Yeah.
But yes, that was that was me.
That was you. And I just have to tell you that I used to do a fake news show in my kitchen called News for Goofs. So I feel like we were destined to be together.
Donna Burns worked for you. Now I know. Donna Burns reported for News for Goofs. It all makes sense now.
She was the evening anchor.
There we go.
News for Goofs national network. I love her name. I think that is so, oh my God, it's amazing.
It's so random, right? Like, I don't know
Yeah.
where Donna Burns came from. My mom said just one day I started
Yeah.
saying it, and now a bunch of our family friends, my
Mhm.
mother's friends, they still refer to me as Donna Burns, and even to this day.
Mhm.
And I think it's great because now I don't have to pretend to be Donna Burns. I literally just get to be Symone Sanders Townsend on MSNBC. But it is,
Fantastic.
it's the things that you talk about choices.
Yeah.
When I chose to create Donna Burns,
Yeah.
I didn't know
No.
that I would be doing what I'm doing right now, but that choice was important, I think, for me. I got involved in politics young when I was at
Yeah.
a organization called Girls Inc. And two of the key programs I did was a media literacy program where I learned to like write and edit and produce.
Mhm.
Who knew? And one of them was a program getting acclimated to the political process. It was called She Votes. And it was through the She Votes program that I first went to Washington, D.C. It's where I learned about how people get elected in this country, women in the political process. And it was that She Votes program that got me interested in politics.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have had, my first career, as I like to say, in politics, I think, without that program. So the choice that I made to get involved in Girls Inc. and the She Votes program helped me find one
Right.
of my careers, which who knew?
I think it's so interesting when you kind of like unwittingly, you're just
Mhm.
interested in something and you're putting together the building blocks of your career just without any knowledge. You're just like, I love
Any
this.
foresight, it's just like we're
Yeah.
just doing what we like.
Yeah. Just doing what we like. There's no pretense of like, one day I'm going to get paid for this. It's just like, this is what I love.
Exactly. And I, frankly, the ability to do what you love and also have that be your career and your job,
Mhm.
in some respects, it's a privilege, right? Because
Right.
I know a lot of people that go to jobs, it's not, if they could choose, they would be doing something else. But
Right.
the fact that I did for so long and do now get paid for doing something that I am just passionate about, something that I would probably do, maybe not as much if I
Right.
wasn't getting paid.
Mhm. Yeah.
Damn, I don't know if I'd be getting up at 5:30 now,
You know what?
but
It might look a little different.
it might look a little different, a couple less hits
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But it truly is, I couldn't have dreamed this up any better. So it's truly a blessing and I think a privilege and an honor.
Oh, wonderful. Are you like a person are you a decisive choice maker in your life? Are you good at making decisions for yourself? Are you like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm going for, I know exactly what I'm doing? Or what is your process like when you've got like a real big one coming up?
This is a good question. I am a risk taker
Okay.
and I'd like to say that I am decisive, but then I make the decision and then I'm like, oh, well, what do you think? I think I'm going to do this, but I think I've decided to do this, but what do you think? I just want your
Mhm.
opinion.
Okay.
And I think I'm decisive, but I'm still like, let me hear what someone else has to say.
Who do you go to? Who are your go-tos?
I might add, my kitchen cabinet, if you will. I have a couple friends that I will consult. My good girlfriend, Maud. I'm like, Maud, I'm thinking about this. And Maud is great because she spent years as in like the energy sector, corporate.
Okay.
I like to say she used to work for the oil company. She's like, that's not what I did, but it was.
Yeah.
Now now she has a beauty company and she
Oh.
works in the DEI space.
Okay.
And they do training modules. And she's like I call her the Olivia Pope of beauty.
Mm.
But I go to Maud and I often ask Maud, this is what I'm thinking. And Maud she doesn't work in TV. She didn't come from politics.
Yeah.
So she doesn't necessarily have a vantage point on the specifics, but she's a really good decision maker and she gives really good feedback. And Maud is very straightforward. So I'll tell her what I'm thinking and she's like, I don't think you should do that.
Okay.
But you do you, but I don't think you should do it. I'll ask my husband, his name is Sean, and he's so funny because he's just like, well, you've already decided what you want to do. So you're actually not asking me for my opinion. And I'm like, sir, but I really would like to know.
Right.
So I think in that respect, it's kind of like, it just depends on what it is. When I'm thinking about some of the big decisions that I've made. When I decided that it was my time to leave the White House, I didn't ask anyone, did they think it was my time to go, right? Because the people that I would have asked, like my mentors, they would have all told me, you need to stay.
Right.
Regardless of what I felt for myself. I was really burnt out. I was tired. I had been hopping on and off planes for like 3 years straight because I went from the campaign to transition straight to the White House. And I was getting married the next year. In 2022, I got married. And I was just like, do I want to be a grumpy cat on my way to planning this wedding? Or do I want to be able to go to brunch and just exhale, you know? And it was a difficult decision for me because I loved my job. I have great, respect and love for the president and the vice president. And so it wasn't like I was having a really negative experience and I had to get out. But I was just, I wasn't necessarily the most pleasant person with these two phones and having to get up at all hours of the morning and night. So when I decided, I made a decision for myself. I wrote things down in a list in 2 different columns about just what were the pros of me staying and what were the pros of me leaving, and then what were the cons of me staying and the cons of me leaving. And the biggest question I asked myself is, would I look back, a year from then and be disappointed in myself that I didn't take what would be the riskier decision? Because to be clear, I knew I had a job at the White House. Like that wasn't the risky decision. The risky decision was leaving and not knowing what I was going to do. But leaving led me to then have a number of other conversations that led me to our president at MSNBC, Rashida Jones, that led me to the job that I have right now. So had I not left, we wouldn't even be chatting.
We would not even be talking. Or I would be trying to talk to you, but you would be like, no, I cannot do this.
We are in the middle of planning a convention.
We do not have time to talk to you. That's a really good example of a question you really kind of can't ask other people because only you can really know when it's the right time to leave what seems to others to be a golden opportunity.
Exactly. And you know what? In those instances, when that is the decision you have to make and you've made it for yourself, when you poll too many people, then you get then it's what they want and not necessarily what you want. And so I was resolute in my decision to the point where when I did start, sharing my decision with others, there were some folks that said, no, I think, are you sure? I think you need to stay. But I was resolute in what I believed. So I was unswayed by, the decisions of others, which frankly, Sam, it made me think of, might seem random, but it was why when people were like, Joe Biden is going to change his mind. I'm like, well, Joe Biden is resolute in not wanting to get out of the race, right? I'm like, Joe Biden has made his decision. There are other people that feel some kind of way, but Joe Biden is clear. And the difference between me and Joe Biden, which is probably why he's the president and I am not, is that, he's a far better person than me because Joe Biden was like, I'm going to do what's good for the country, regardless of what I feel. And that brought us to the moment that Democrats and the entire world, frankly, are about to witness, which is the nomination of the first woman of color, the first woman of South Asian descent to be the nominee of a major political party.
Where were you when you found out? Where were you? Do you remember?
I was on my way to my mother-in-law's house.
Yeah.
And I had left the studio. And you know what? I'd asked someone, I said, do I need to leave this makeup on? Like, are we going to hear anything from Joe Biden today? And when I called, folks were like, no, it's fine. I said, okay, great. And I took my makeup off. I got in my car. I was driving to my mother-in-law's house. And one of our senior producers for our show, Brittany Ruff, called me. And she said, I'm just making sure you saw the email. I'm like, what now? What email? I just left. What do y'all want?
I want to read it.
And she said, Joe Biden dropped out. I said, what? And my sister and my mother were in town. They were in the car because my husband had a huge work event, a celebration that evening. And I'm like, what? And I'm like telling my sister, I'm like, pull it up. And we get to my mother-in-law's house. And I'm like, Joe Biden dropped out. As soon as I walk in, she's like, we heard. And then by the time I get into the house, it's like, and he endorsed the vice president. I'm like, oh my God. I said, I got to go back to work. I said, get y'all stuff. I got to go back. I got to go back to work.
I got to go. Turn this car around. I got to get back in.
Literally. Do not dilly-dally. Use the bathroom if you got to use the bathroom. We are getting back in the car.
What a moment. What a moment.
Right. And honestly, Sam, I mean, I was just kind of like, I read the whole thing, his whole letter, and I'm like, wow. That's when I was like, Joe Biden is a good man. I mean, that's the person that I know.
Right.
And there are lots of, as I think I've said before, there are lots of amazing politicians and elected officials and just brilliant leaders, but they are just sometimes everybody's not a good person.
Yes.
But Joe Biden, he is a good person. And to put the icing on the cake, he shut down any additional conversation, because that's exactly what happened. He shut down additional conversation about an open convention by endorsing his vice president. And I was reading it like, look at Joe Biden playing chess while some other people were playing checkers or badminton. I really think that if you would have told me, again, at the beginning of June, that Kamala Harris would be the Democratic nominee, she would be literally like taking over TikTok and all these social media with these positive memes.
Right.
She'd be raising records amounts of cash and garnering crowds of 10, 12, 15,000 people. I would be like, now, I don't really know if y'all are sure about what you're talking about. But this moment that we are experiencing, I mean, really, if you looked at the polls, people said that we hoped we had different options, but we know we don't have them. So if we don't have them, this is who we'll vote for.
Right.
But I really wanted different options. And when you presented a different option from one of the major parties to the American people, they responded.
I feel like the amount of psychic relief was just, it is in the air, and it continues to be in the air, as much as people are trying to like kind of push this idea that it's like a honeymoon period and the we're in a fever dream. I'm like, you know what? Some honeymoons last.
Yeah, and let the people have their enthusiasm.
Yeah, can we just...
I'm not shocked by the enthusiasm, because obviously I used to work for the vice president. And so since I have not worked for her, but had, the show on MSNBC, we cover what happens in the White House, what happens in politics, what happens, from politics to pop culture. Mm-hmm. So I have been following what she has been doing on the campaign trail, especially over the last year and a half. So I wasn't surprised, the crowd, every time she goes somewhere, the crowds have been very receptive to her.
Right.
You remember the Tennessee Three right after the 3 state legislative representatives were expelled from, 2 were expelled, 3, but there were 3 of them. Mm-hmm. I went down to interview the Tennessee Three in Nashville the day after 2 of the 3 were expelled. While I was there, I got wind that a special guest was also coming down. I found out it was Vice President Harris. So she came down to surprise the crowd at this rally that they were doing kind of across the way, if you will, from where we were going to do this interview. Mm-hmm. So I went to the rally, and I sat in the press area to just see, okay, let me see how she goes in this, how she handles this moment. This is an organic thing. They didn't have time to plan and practice. They didn't know last night that they were coming. They decided this morning. And the crowd was very, very receptive to her. Very receptive. Afterwards, when I interviewed the Tennessee Three, they all talked about how important and impactful it was for the vice president to come down, how passionate she was, how helpful she was in their private conversations. And to me, that was a moment. And when I saw that with my own 2 eyes, I'm like, okay, something is happening here. Like, she's enjoying the work that she has to do, but she is also understanding in a way that I don't think other people have realized what her presence can do to shift and change the conversation. So when she became the nominee and folks were just like, yeah, in a great way, I wasn't surprised, because I'm like, oh, that's what I saw in Nashville, and that's what she has been doing over the campaign trail over the last couple of months. But people don't usually pay attention to the vice president, any vice president, frankly, because their name is number 2 on the door, not number 1.
I do feel like that Kamala's campaign is not centering the fact that she'd be the first woman president in the way that it was so central to Hillary's campaign. That feels intentional to me, right? It
feels intentional, and I think that's correct. Mm-hmm. People do like to make history. I think in general, like voters, when there's something to, I think back to Obama, and in 2008 was the first time I could vote for a presidential. I turned 18 in 2000. When did I turn 18? I turned 18 in 2007. At the end of the year, I turned 18. So 2008 was my opportunity to cast my first ballot. Mm-hmm. And I remember the energy around that. And there were so many people who liked the idea of making history, but also liked these other things that Obama stood for. So as I like to say, Sam, I don't think the culture wars are a distraction. I actually think it's the playbook. And it is the playbook for the Republican Party apparatus. Right. And I think the Republican Party apparatus would love nothing more than for Democrats to come out and say, Kamala Harris should be the next president of the United States because she's a woman.
Right.
And because she's a woman, she's a history-making woman, she's a woman of color, and don't you want to make history? Vote for Kamala Harris.
Right.
And that, to me, does not give base voters, frankly, something to vote for. People who
Right.
they want to vote for the future. They want to vote for hope. They want something that is
They
inspiring.
want like a vision. They want vision.
Yeah, vision that is not just about the candidate, but that is about them as the people in their lives and the voters. But I know the Republican Party apparatus, they're like, oh, they wanted to have it because she's a woman. They wanted to have it because that was one of the talking points.
Yeah.
So I think it's smart what the campaign has done as position her, yet not ignore the history that she would be making, right? The history is not the reason to vote for the Harris-Walz ticket.
It's not so easy to dismiss.
Exactly. It's not as easy to dismiss. Like, they're giving you a whole policy platform. They're giving you a vision, if you will, for the future. And to be clear, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they're giving a vision for the future. The vision has something against childless cat ladies. No offense to the cats, apparently, but offense to the childless ladies. And Donald Trump's vision specifically has a lot of retribution tied up into it. It's just not. It's not hopeful. I listened to his Elon Musk chit chat on X recently, and I was just like, "Where is the hope?"
That's really funny. Hope does not live here, I think, is really kind of the subtext for the whole thing, and it really is it's a dystopian vision. It is like the upside down world.
Yeah,
for sure.
It harkens back to his first inaugural address. He talked about American carnage. And I feel like he is still there. Like, he never left warning of American carnage, and it's just dark vision. And frankly, that appeals to some people, right? That's why the polls are close. That's why this election will be close. But I think winning campaigns are campaigns that give folks something to hope for. Something like a vision for the future. I talked to a lot of voters right after the debate, actually, the first presidential debate between President Biden and Donald Trump. We went to Butler County, Pennsylvania, and we talked to an intergenerational group of Black women. And the younger women in the group that we talked to, they said they feel hopeless. And I was just like, oh no, this is not good. And you talk to people now, and they're excited. They feel hopeful for the future. They have this a little twinkle in folks' eyes.
Yes.
And I think that is really important, not just for the Harris-Walz campaign, but frankly for the country.
For the country. I mean, my daughter's voting for the first time this year. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Do the right thing. I mean, it's obvious, but it's a whole different world. I mean, we watched the debate together, that fateful debate, and she was definitely like, what is happening right now? And now she feels, I can see that she's like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like we all are. We're like,
It's like, okay, I'm excited that this is your daughter's first election.
I know.
I think of all the young people who their first election was in 2020, and they had to vote in a pandemic.
Yeah.
They missed the opportunity to physically go to the polls, get their I voted sticker. And so this election, I think, is also important to bring back just the community aspect, if you will, of the electoral process. I love election day. I love early vote as well. But I want to get my I voted sticker. I think it's very important.
Me too. I want my sticker. I want to be in line. I want people to be playing music. Exactly. I want it to feel ebullient. Now, all of this said, and we have to say this though, it's going to be so hard the next few months. Yeah. Can never rest. Nobody ever rests. Everybody's going to hit the streets. We're all going to be on 400 Zooms a day, knocking on doors. All of that is happening. It's not like it's a waltz.
Oh, no. I hearken back to the point that I made about, while I believe that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's vision is dystopian and dark and cruel and does not, invite people in. There are a number of people in this country that want what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are selling. Yeah. There are people that are still showing up to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's rallies when they have them. There are folks that are going to cast their ballot for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. This election, I believe, is going to be close. It was close the last time. Yeah. It was just about 12,000 votes in Georgia. That was the difference between Joe Biden winning Georgia, and that helped him become the president, and Donald Trump.
Right.
So I know that people are excited about the crowds, but I worked for Bernie Sanders in 2015, 2016. I was his national press secretary. That was my first national campaign. And I can tell you, honey, crowds don't vote, because if they did, Bernie Sanders would have been the Democratic nominee in 2016.
Yes. And you can't vote on TikTok. Like, doesn't matter how robust your TikTok is.
No, we are not elevated to the point where people can cast their ballot from their bed on their smartphone. Okay, you have to get up and you have to request a mail-in ballot and mail your ballot in and drop that thing off, or you need to physically go to the polls. So I think that the difference is going to be infrastructure matters here, Sam. And I have been taking a look at the infrastructure of both the Harris-Walz campaign and the Trump campaign. And to be clear, Vice President Harris inherited the infrastructure that the Biden team, the Biden-Harris campaign built. And it's robust. Like, they are knocking doors. We recently spoke to the Battleground States director, and he talked about that they had, just for the first weekend in August, they had 129,000 people sign up for volunteer shifts. I'm sorry, what?
What?
I was just like, wait, can you say that again? Like, the numbers were insane. He talked about the doors that they were knocking, the phone calls that were being made. That's when people sign up for volunteer shifts, that's what they're doing. And the number of offices that are opened all across the country in these key battleground states. And I juxtapose that with what the Trump campaign and the Republican Party apparatus is doing. And Sam, they were closing some offices. They closed some outreach centers. The Trump campaign has opened up a couple different offices. You remember when the congressman from Florida who was saying, slavery wasn't all too, he wishes Jim Crow was back. He was doing a Trump campaign event, an office opening, when he said those comments.
Fantastic.
Just very, very motivated.
Love it.
But there are not as many offices, and the infrastructure is not as robust. Infrastructure, if Kamala Harris is successful in this election, it will be because she was able to rally the masses behind a vision for the future, and the infrastructure that the campaign had in place was there to support the rallying of those masses.
Right. What kind of interviews do you think that Harris should be doing? I mean, other than doing like every single interview and being absolutely everywhere all at once, what do you think are the key kind of stops she needs to make to get it?
Well, look, I think that obviously, she should come talk to you.
Obviously,
she should definitely come talk to us on the weekend at
100%,
MSNBC, of course.
100%.
To be very clear, if we're going to...
Other than us.
At the top, yes. Other than us. I think it is important that candidates are accessible to the media apparatus. When I worked for the vice president, one of the things that I ensured that we did, and frankly, I had to, because unlike the president has what's called a protective pool. And that just means that there are people that have to follow him around all the time. And the White House Correspondents Association, they put together, they facilitate a pool that is always with the president. And there are people that rotate in and out of the pool. And the president, ever since I can remember, has always had a protective pool. The vice president doesn't have that. Okay, so that's why when Joe Biden goes to church, there are reporters out there with him. Not because the reporters want to be outside the church, okay? But because they are part of the pool that day. The vice president does not have a protective pool. And frankly, when the Biden-Harris administration started, the White House Correspondents Association came to us and they asked for a protective pool. And I was like, no, because when you get a protective pool, you can't undo it. It's not like January 2021. It's like, okay, we'll take the protective pool this time. And then 6 months in, it's like, we don't want y'all to come to the farmer's market.
Okay.
It doesn't work like that. So you have to have the protective pool. So because she doesn't have one, when I worked for her, it was very important that when reporters were getting on the plane, because they pay to be on the plane, and they're choosing to be there, that they are getting something out of it, right? So if you're just getting on the plane, covering the event that everybody else can see on the whitehouse.gov/live, and then leaving, like what is the added editorial value? So I would ensure that the senior staff, and if there were any guests that were on the plane, would come back and speak to the reporters on the record. And then that the vice president herself would likely, after her events, make sure she would go and speak to the reporters either at the venue where she was or plane side. And that is important, and that allows them to get their questions answered. The Kamala Harris that I know, she has no problem answering questions and talking to the reporters that are traveling with her and doing local press. I think those are things that they should continue to do. Talking plane side, talking to the local press, and then yes, some large sit-down interviews. In 2016, 48 hours after Secretary Clinton selected Senator Tim Kaine as her running mate, she and Senator Tim Kaine sat down for a joint interview. In 2020, about 12 days after then candidate Biden selected then Senator Harris as his running mate, 12 days later, they sat down for a joint interview. So there's no right. So people that are like, they haven't done a joint interview. Like, honey, this was she didn't even know she was going to be the nominee. Like, what is happening here? So I think post-convention, we should see a joint interview sit down with the vice president and her running mate, and then some more sit down interviews with just the vice president and some of the high profile media. I would just say lastly that they also need to continue to do what they have been doing in terms of non-traditional media. So some of the influencers and whatnot, but it's really important to talk to the legacy press, if you will, and the media apparatus, because people are still watching television. I don't care what the papers say. They are still watching TV. They are reading these outlets. And frankly, they deserve part of the reason, frankly, that so quickly the narrative turned on President Biden was because he was not talking to the media apparatus. If I can just be frank.
Right.
And because he had not been talking to the media apparatus consistently, it was very easy for people to, flip that switch and say, yeah, he doesn't do interviews. Like there was lots of speculation.
Right.
So if the people aren't talking to you, how are they supposed to know? So there's a two-pronged approach here. And I think it would be a mistake to continue what the president did for a while, which is not do press conferences, not do sit-down interviews. But from my experience with the vice president, she is always willing to, to talk to folks. She just wants it to make sense. And frankly, I think that when she sits down for an interview, we need to have some policy prescriptions from her to ask about. And if she sat down for an interview and she's like, oh, I haven't flushed it out yet. Well, girl, why are you here?
Right. Yeah. So let's get it all. Get it all.
Exactly. So I think they're trying to time it to where they have the pieces where she can adequately talk about in depth what her policy positions are, as opposed to giving a surface level conversation with a real reporter, which frankly I think would backfire on her in her campaign.
I think it's good to have milestones. So you're you've the milestone of the DNC. Once the air clears, there's going to be a lot of. I mean, obviously, we're in that week now as this airs. There's excitement. There's a drum beat. It's thrilling, and then you capitalize on that, and you keep being out there by doing more stuff.
Yeah, you know what? The vice president can call into the weekend, first thing on Saturday. We'll have her. She won't call in, she can come, but we'll take her on the phone. However she would like to, chime in.
I mean, full slate, but we'll make space. Whatever. There we go. It's fine. I will say that one of the things that I'm enjoying the most is that the press releases they've been putting out whenever Trump or Vance do something, calling them weird. It's super authentic, but it's also true because they are so goddamn weird.
I did not know that weird would get under people's skin so much. I'm going to be honest. I said something to my husband a week or two ago, and I was like, that's just weird. He was mad at me for 2 days. I said, you just cannot be throwing weird around, honey. It is problematic. And so I think that weird just really got under J.D. Vance and Donald Trump's skin. I also think, though, that there's a balance that needs to be struck here. And while weird is absolutely accessible, I think it is accurate, weird does not seem as serious, if you know what I mean. It's not just, so what they say is weird matters, because it's not just weird that they want to be in your doctor's office and tell your doctor what kind of health care you should be able to receive. It's also dangerous.
Yes.
Women are literally dying.
Yes.
So where is the balance? And I think what we are seeing in real time is the campaign work out that balance. But the reminder, these are the same people that work for Joe Biden. They didn't get a whole new slate of comms people typing up the press releases.
Right.
And so tone matters. I think sometimes in campaigns, the campaign staff and the tone, especially folks who are not the spokespeople, if you will, for the candidate, but sometimes the tone of the paper releases and whatnot can be a little more snarky, if you will, than what you will actually hear from the candidate. But you need that balance. So I'm here for it. Drag them, but keep it just a little bit elevated. I don't believe in going high and going low. Even though I love the forever first lady. I believe when they go low, you gotta go toe to toe.
Toe to toe. Yeah. I like a little hot sauce in my press release.
Exactly. I like a little paprika.
I like a little paprika.
actually cayenne pepper. Paprika is just what
I do. You can get like
for show.
spicy. You could get like spicy Hungarian paprika, which is better.
Oh,
That's the hot
that
stuff.
will now that
That's the
that
good
is good.
stuff. But I do feel like when you go out in the world, and I'm sure that you experience this, but when you go out and you actually like just like are living your life and you talk to people in the world, the vision that is presented to them, like I think about people who've been really captured by Fox
Mm.
News and Truth Social and all of that. And when you meet people like in a restaurant or a bar and they tell you that like they're afraid, what like I live in New York City,
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh my God, New York City, hundreds of people are getting pushed in front of subway trains every single day." I'm like,
Mm.
"Stop.
Mm.
Stop." Like the vision, the portrait that is being painted for you of urban spaces, like of how other people live, is not accurate. We are living. We are like regular, normal people. We are
Yes.
living in cities. We are thriving, or, there's friction, there's problems, just like anywhere, though.
You know what? I think that everybody want to always blame social media, Sam, but I'm gonna say that we as people can so easily, other
Hmm.
our fellow,
Yes.
neighbors, if you will,
Yes.
because our fellow humans, because we are not in relationship anymore. I think the pandemic
Right.
also exacerbated this. People are at home. They are not necessarily in their offices like they used to be. People are not going out people are much more secluded. And then when you throw the layer of social media on top of it, we literally get to self-select
Hmm.
and what we are consuming, so
Right.
that we are reinforcing only what it is that we think we know, only the things that we think we like. There are literally buttons on social media where you can click hide all content like this. So we're not
Right.
seeing things that we do not like or want to see. We are self-selecting when we, obviously with our friends and whatnot, people are not about the business of putting themselves in situations with folks that they may deem to be different than them in some ways. And
Right.
so therefore it's very easy to believe that somebody who lives in this place that I've, only ever seen on television or maybe only been to once believes a certain kind of thing, because you don't know anybody like that.
Right.
And I think that what we have to be about the business which is why this is the point I made about community. Like when you are going to stand in line to go vote, you don't know who's in front of you or behind you.
Right.
And if the line is a little long, which in most places in this country it is long, which is another, story, frankly,
Hmm.
why the line so long? It is a
Yes.
form of voter suppression. If you're in line for 25, 30 minutes, you're going to get to know somebody. Like just putting yourself in spaces and places with
Right.
people that you do not know does help break down the barriers. And I don't have the answers for all of it, but I do
Right.
think that we need to be more intentional about not othering one another. Like I'm from North Omaha, Nebraska.
Right.
When I tell people I'm from Nebraska, they always go, "Oh, what?" I'm like, "Yes, there are Black people in Nebraska, Black people all over the country, honey." I grew up in North Omaha, predominantly African American part of the city, but I went to all girls Catholic high school, and I went to Catholic school actually my entire schooling.
Hmm.
In grade school, I went to a grade school that was like around the corner, but I went to all girls Catholic high school. I was a Mercy girl, and there were maybe 5 girls of color in my class, and people who did not know anyone except for me and my sister that lived in North Omaha. And I think just that experience, us being in a different environment and interacting, like it's not easy for me to
Right.
other people,
Right.
given my experience, the many experiences I had growing up. And I just want people to know that, everybody out there is not trying to do people harm just because they don't agree with you 1,000%.
Like if I can extrapolate from what you're saying, I do feel like that feels like a very integral part of the weekend of your
Yeah.
show is talking
Yeah.
to people who you wouldn't normally expect. First of all, you co-host the show with Michael Steele, who was
Yes.
the
Former RNC chair.
former RNC chair. So that alone, I mean, there have been so many former Republicans like them, like who've just done like a 180.
Michael Steele, he'll tell you he's still a Republican
Yeah.
today, which
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, you are, Michael.
Okay.
There's sometimes I'm like, you know what, you are a Republican. And Alicia Menendez is our other co-host, and we all bring different
Right.
perspectives, and we don't all agree on everything all the time, but we are starting the conversation. And I think more people need to start the conversation. Like so many people will tell me, "Oh, I love Michael Steele. I'm glad he's not a Republican anymore." I'm like, y'all, he's still a Republican.
He still is.
But it's okay. You can still love him. You can still love
It's
Michael Steele.
okay.
It's fine. But
Yeah.
just know he a Republican and he gonna let you know.
Well, okay, but you have the Project 2025 guy on, Kevin
Yes,
Roberts.
Kevin Roberts.
Tell me everything. I mean, how did you decide to give him an opportunity to talk? Like, what was your thinking?
So Kevin Roberts had done a number of print interviews prior to our interview, and he notably did one with the Associated Press where he's like, the left won't be able to stop us. And he
Right.
was talking very specifically about their policy proposals. And this was at a time when Project 2025 was not in the mainstream ethos, if you will, but we
Right.
had been talking about it on the weekend since the inception of our show.
Yeah.
And I remember we got on one of our pre-show calls the week before, and I'm like, we should ask for Kevin Roberts. He's talking to the Associated Press. He obviously would like to tell people what he's doing. So let's ask him. All they can do is tell us is no. And so we put in the request and they came back and said he'd love to join. And when he sat down, it was so funny because he came into the studio and he's like, it's good to see you. I've been waiting for this. And we're like, well, we're excited. Very lovely.
Yeah,
He's
nice.
very, very, very upbeat.
Would you like a bottle of water? We have some snacks in the green room. We have.
Would you like a
Would
brown mic or a black
would you-
mic, sir? We also have a white mic, whatever you would like to go with your outfit. And when we talked amongst ourselves as hosts prior to that interview, the one thing we all agreed on was that Kevin Roberts is what I would classify as a true believer, meaning that prior to he was at the Heritage Foundation, he ran a very conservative Christian college. And while he was the president of that college, they didn't take any federal funds because he didn't want federal money because some of the money would have came from the Obama administration or something like that. That's how much of a true believer that he is.
Right.
So because he's a true believer, we could not spend our time in this interview trying to get him to debunk what it is that he was saying. That's not why he was there. Everybody's talking about Project 2025. Some people are saying that, people on the left or liberals are fear-mongering about it. Let's let Kevin Roberts tell us, the president of the Heritage Foundation, who is spearheading this project. We'll let him tell us in his own words what this is. And if he says anything that is it's questionable, we will fact check him and ask him to clarify.
Right.
And that is how we decided we wanted to conduct the interview. And I think that's what folks got. And so in the very beginning, we started by saying, I read in the New York Times, sir, that you said that this is a plan that if Joe Biden wanted it, you would want him to implement it. It's not a plan for Trump. It's a plan for anybody that would like to implement it, but you don't think Joe Biden would. He said, thank you so much for that question. I saw outside on the wall that it said truth and honesty, and that was truth and honesty. And then he went on to tell us that Project 2025 was about institutionalizing Trumpism. And not just Trump, but any conservative, any Republican president. And they are well poised to be able to do that.
Right.
And I was just like, well. And then he kept going and he kept saying the things. And when it's something like that, I don't believe, there were people that said we shouldn't have quote unquote platformed Kevin Roberts. But if everybody's talking about Project 2025 and you got one set of people saying that some people are lying about it, and another set of people saying, no, this is what it says. Why don't we ask the people to put it together?
Right.
Let people see for themselves. And I believe that in this election, especially, it's very important that people are able to see for themselves. So I don't believe in, frankly, deplatforming Donald Trump, but I do believe that he needs to be asked real questions by actual, trained people that will get the truth and not have chit chat with his friends on social media.
Are you feeling like you're seeing a lot of the same mistakes made? Or you feel like you're seeing a repeat of what are you seeing out there? Because I know what I'm seeing.
Sam, it's there have been some lessons learned, right? The NPR did a very extensive fact check after the fact of Donald Trump's press conference. And the reporter that did the fact check, his wife, who was also a reporter, I remember she posted on the site formerly known as Twitter, and she posted a link to it and said, my husband ignored me all weekend so he could produce this for you all. So here's my sacrifice. And I thought that was lovely. The fact checks are after the fact are good, but then, I was kind of concerned that the media apparatus signed up for a press conference where the reporters in the room did not have microphones. Therefore, the people who are watching at home could not hear the questions for themselves.
Right.
That concerns me. I'm concerned if we are just going to play Donald Trump's press conference unfettered for an hour and then, not cover what his opponent is doing.
Right.
On television live in a similar fashion. I'm concerned. I'm concerned if people are going to sit down and, interview Donald Trump and like, we don't have like just a fact check running somewhere on the side, honey, somewhere, this digital thing. So those kind of things concern me, Sam, but I do believe, I believe that the media apparatus as a whole does understand the gravity of this moment. I think as a whole, the media apparatus is struggling about how to effectively, because Donald Trump has evaded almost every other system that's that is there for accountability. Yeah. The courts have not figured out how to deal with him. Okay. The political apparatus, they have not figured out how to deal with him. I mean, literally, like if they did, he wouldn't be the nominee right now. Right. And so the fourth estate is also, I still think, struggling with how to deal with him. At first it was deplatforming the man altogether. We just not going to play him. Well, I think that benefited Donald Trump because the crazy was not on full display. Right. Like he doesn't sound coherent sometimes, to the point where I'm like, well, anybody else hearing this?
I don't know. I can't believe that people, I actually do. I kind of am that person who's like, how can you be undecided? Like, literally, how can you be a person who's like, I'm still thinking about it? Because every time he opens his mouth, I actually want to throw up.
The fractured media apparatus matters here. Yes. When some of the craziest things that he would say on some of his rallies, even Fox News would cut away. Yeah. Yeah. And then the package that is produced that they show to the audience and the way that the host on that network will talk about what Donald Trump and his running mate did are in a way that would have you believe that it was just a regular run-of-the-mill rally, honey, and everything was all right. Yeah. So the fractured media environment here, I think, helps, again, to the point where how we are all out here self-selecting. It is reinforcing only what it is that we think we know. And so, which is why when what would be referred to as like mainstream media outlets do make the decision to cover some of the things that Donald Trump says, he then is held accountable for them. Remember his bloodless comment where a bloodbath? A bloodbath. Donald Trump had to go do an interview 3 days later with his friends at Fox to say, that's not what I meant. I meant blah, blah, blah. He would have never corrected himself otherwise, but it was being covered. And because it was being covered and people were like, what? He said this? This is not, it was not good for him. Therefore, he had to speak back up. Right. And so think about if all of the things he was saying were covered in that manner rigorously. But the problem is he says so much crazy mess. It's like, we tired. Oh my gosh, I just can't.
There's too much.
You have to, because he could be the next president of the United States of America.
Can I make a wish upon a star right now? Can you please moderate one of the debates? I swear to God, I just think that it should be you. I want it to be you.
Well,
I do.
I think for many reasons it won't be me. There are some people. I think there's some people, far ahead of me in that line who have, moderated more debates. No, but I'm happy to give my commentary after the fact.
No, I just think it would be perfect. It's the perfect situation. Do you think that the debates happen?
I think that at least one debate happens. Okay. I think we see a debate on September 10th because the Harris campaign has committed to that debate, and I think the vice president herself wants to have that opportunity, that contrast. I think Donald Trump does not want to be called a coward and cannot stomach sitting, watching, flipping through cable news or looking at any of the papers, and someone says he was scared of debating this lady over here. Right. I don't think it's going to go well for Donald Trump. I think that Donald Trump should say, forget people calling me a coward, I'm not going to do it. Right. But I think that he is going to do it anyway, and when it happens, we're going to see on full display the choice in this election. And I think it just might be so treacherous. I don't know if we'll see another one after that.
Do you think he's going to look?
I would hope they do another, because after that, allegedly, NBC might get one. So we want more debates.
Just one more.
But I think, frankly, and let me just say this about the debates. I think that for all of the, the Democrats are like, the vice president will do as many debates as they ask, all the debates. Let me just say this, okay? Because I've prepped the vice president for a debate before. I was on her prep team when we did the vice presidential debate in 2020. I think that debates and debate prep, they take time for every single candidate, regardless of who you are. Maybe not Donald Trump because he don't practice. No. But candidates that want to do well, debate prep takes time. And I think that it is not the best use of time for the Democrats, given that their candidate just got in the race, that she spends her time in a room in debate prep. And so therefore, if you agree to all these extra debates and then you do not have the adequate prep to back them up, folks could end up with a not good debate night for the Democrats, and that will not bode well.
No, not permitted.
We do not want any more bad debates. Okay?
No, we cannot have that.
Okay, we don't want that. We don't want that because you done had her out on the campaign trail and then doing this and that and then 3 interviews because they ain't done no interviews and now 5 minutes of debate prep. We just gonna do a debate because Donald Trump is just so disastrous.
No,
he is a showman if nothing else.
Yeah,
he'll like to show up for the camera.
We do not want him lurching around behind her in any. My goodness,
I could just imagine. I mean, I just feel like if he, I would encourage anyone not to ever attempt to walk up on the Vice President of the United States of America, but especially while Kamala Harris is the Vice President of the United States of America.
Oh my.
Because I just.
Oh my.
I don't think it's gonna go well.
I don't like that. This has been such a pleasure. Talking to you has been.
You are so lovely.
A joy. I just love what you do. I just think you're just one of the greats. I really do.
Thank you, Sam. I think you are hilarious, and I've just always loved you. So when they asked me, I was like, of course.
That was Symone Sanders Townsend, and I had no choice but to look up one thing. She was the national press secretary for Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign when she was just 25 years old. Was she the youngest ever to have that job? Yes, it looks like she was, at least for a campaign. The youngest White House press secretary was Ron Ziegler, who was 29 when he started working for President Nixon. Well, there you go. Thanks for joining us. I'm Samantha Bee. See you next week for some more Choice Words. Thank you for listening to Choice Words, which was created by and is hosted by me. The show is produced by Tzvia Baron-Reinstein with editing and additional producing by Josh Richmond. We're distributed by Lemonada Media, and you can find me at RealSamB on X and Instagram. Follow Choice Words wherever you get your podcasts or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership.